Okay, so I want to officially begin and welcome everyone. And we had a few shares at the beginning, and we have so much to cover because we learned this week in chapters 2 and 3 about the page and the knight and the prince and two keys. And so we have so much to go over today. To begin, let's hop into the page stage. It's kind of funny for me to teach this because it feels a little strange with the name, but so the first is I have two pages in my house. And I guess my oldest son is going into knighthood, but it's really cool to learn about this stage and about this part where there's these boys that just really want to be knights and they want to do errands and show how strong they are and prove their valor, right? And so as we learn how to interact with them, Mary Joy, my mom, shared about how just the learning how to interrupt the masculine, that one-track mindedness, and just say, hey, sorry to interrupt, can be really honoring of the masculine. And I've been doing that with my sons this week, just, like, hey, sorry to interrupt. I want to just tell you this, and when would be a good time for you to come up, and giving them the power and giving them the honor of recognizing that they're into something, even if it's something that I don't think is as cool, like they're watching their thing on the screens or they're playing a game. So that's been really helpful for me. We'll learn more about this as well as the book goes on, because Karen teaches school. And so she has a lot of pages that she gets to interact with, but giving pages tasks and responsibility is something that really gives them a sense of belonging and confidence and kind of draws them to you, which is a really cool thing to know.
Hey, Paige, can you just remind me of the ages again?
Yeah, so pages are from 0 to puberty, basically. And then puberty until early 20s, even early 30s, depending on how long a man or a boy, as a guy, ends up being in knight stage. And the knight is that adventure and that going off to conquer the next thing. But some men start really early, depending on their programming and what religious or cultural programming there is to start a family. So some knights will get married, but it's more of the intention to, like, for the next conquer or the next adventure. And that's the way they see marriage. So after when they see a king and they have this kind of aha moment of, oh my gosh, I don't have a kingdom, and like that king has something that I want, that's almost the moment that they go into princehood. And then once they're in princehood, that's when the early princehood, they start to just look and try to figure out what kind of king they're going to be, but they know they're going for being a king. And then once they decide, they start to put their head down. That's middle prince. And that's where they just put their head down and start working like crazy. And that lasts 10 to 12 years. So from that moment where they kind of find their niche and they start going for it, that's about 10 to 15 years. And then they have this kind of respite period, which is late prince stage, where they get to just relax a little bit and they feel less of a drive, but they feel kind of like, like I'm in a groove. They start to relax and play a little bit more. But unfortunately, this phase is really short, because then they go into their tunnel. And the tunnel is that one-man tunnel that we'll talk about later. And the tunnel, when they get out of it, they become a king. So that's usually 40s and sometimes 50s for men. So it's been really fun to have these conversations with men to see, like, where do you think you are? And there is an element to men going into the tunnel and then not coming out and going back into prince. So there is something that happens there with some men. Some men never get out of the tunnel, and some men go back into prince. But when they do get out of, when a man truly like owns who he is and defines himself with that courage, then he goes into kingdom. So that's like an overview of it all. Did that answer your question, Lori?
It did. So the tunnel is actually a stage. Because
It's
she said there were 4 stages, and that's what's been confusing. So you have the page, you have the prince, you have,
night.
I mean, the knight, right, the page, the knight, the prince, and then the king. So the tunnel is just the transition that she's been talking about in the other channel, right? I mean, yeah, chapters.
Yeah, so
Okay, that makes
there's
sense.
3 phases within the prince, and then there's
Right,
the tunnel, which is more of like a transition period.
right.
And then there's also the sage at the very end, which we'll talk about as well. That's
Mm.
also what I would call a stage, but some men never get to that. So it's not a full stage but it is more of a state of being is the sage or
Okay.
she calls it the elder. I think I call it the sage, but it's the elder.
Yeah.
So
Thank you for just, yeah, because it was a
yeah, and
little
it's
all
so
over the
helpful for
place, and
everyone.
yeah.
So if you have questions like this, like please let us know. I want to take a pause and just introduce my sister, the co-host, Brooke. She's monitoring the chat, and she is my sidekick in everything I do. Like she's just the best. So just a shout out to her and her help and her support in this whole process. She was helping me just right before this call. She always helps me when I'm in a pinch and when I'm ever on a project in creation. And so anyway, love you.
I'm honored to be here. Hi, everyone. Thanks for putting this together, Paige.
Yeah, so Brooke, if you see any questions in the comments, please just hop in and ask them. So
I think what's really neat about all of these calls is it's new information that Paige is such a stand for us to get. So just wanted to do a shout out to Paige for putting this together for all of us for free, and so that we can keep learning, so we can interact in more powerful ways together. It's awesome. So thanks, Paige.
Thank you. It's so fun to see all of you on here. You are some of my favorite humans on the whole planet. So the key that I want to jump into next is key number 2, which is listening to learn. And in all of Allison's programs, she really hammers this in, but it's the keys to listening to a man, and something that I so appreciate learning, especially because I have a tendency, well, basically to do all the things that she's taught us not to do. But the thing that she teaches is to not interrupt. And who is a little bit guilty of interrupting? I'm like, my brain moves really fast, and I will think that I'm ahead of someone in a conversation. So especially when I'm talking with a man and his brain is literally working so differently than me, my assumption of what I think he's thinking or what he's going to say next, and me saying something is a total like disempowering experience for them, is what I've learned. And something that I didn't really realize. And I know that in my marriage, I would interrupt, and then he would shut down, and he'd just be like, "You interrupted." And I'd be like, "No, like I really wanted to know." And it'd be like that's it. Like it was so that he felt emasculated, right? And I didn't know what I was doing. So how cool that we can learn this stuff. The other really key thing that you'll notice if you go onto any calls with Allison, she's brutal about this, is if you go in and you start to ask a question, she will cut you off if you're not clear. And asking simple 1-sentence questions is really key for the masculine. So I'd love to hear, like, if you men on the call have any thoughts about this or any experiences in this, I would love for you to share. Just put up your hand. But it's something that I hear now that I know how women go around in circles. And when we don't ask a clear question, it actually takes away the opportunity for men to express themselves, which gives them power. So I'm going to just, in the workbook, I have this written out, but I'm going to re-emphasize what it says. It says, by interrupting a man or setting him up with no-win questions, a woman can prevent him from expressing himself and diminish his power. When a man can't express himself, he is weaker or less powerful. He will be much less productive, and he won't feel known or understood or appreciated. This will kill his desire to provide. The relationship will suffer, and there won't be any real intimacy, because intimacy comes from sharing ourselves, so partnership will be attainable. This all happens from not listening and not listening to learn. So has anyone been applying this in your life, or men, do you have any comments or shares around this? I'd love to hear something from any of you. Yes, Austin and then Mary.
Yeah, I felt kind of like shocked by learning this. I think I haven't had really a chance to be introspective about that until recently, but I think a lot of like where that power was kind of taken away from me was not being able to voice my opinion in certain relationships and even like my family life, and just being shut down from what I had to say, or almost just kind of like pushed to the side with responding too fast before I was able to get my full thoughts out. So yeah, it was really interesting learning about that, and then just kind of recognizing the people that do let me speak, and like my longer pauses where I'm like thinking isn't just replaced by, oh, okay, now I'm listening, and that's the end of my thought. It's I'm able to get my full thought out there and have that value and my power back. So
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. And that reminds me of my brother. He had 5 sisters, and he totally had that experience. Like, now looking back, we're like, oh no, what did we do? You know, but it is so hard. So thank you for sharing. That's so real for so many men. So thank you. I really appreciate that. Okay, Mom, go ahead.
Yeah, so now thank you, Paige, because now you know why you guys always thought that I was favoring him on the rare occasion when he had something to say at the dinner table, and I would put my hands up and say, wait a minute, somebody's speaking already, let him finish. And I was at this thing on Wednesday, and I asked Dad to come to this council meeting on landscaping, and here's what happened. There were 2 women on the council, and me and Gregory, and bless his heart, he was with us and he was giving us his input if he had some. But these 2 women, I had learned from Allison to really try not to interrupt. And really, Greg's probably on this phone call somewhere, but I really try really hard not to interrupt. But they just interrupted absolutely everything that Dad would start to say. It was hilarious to me to see it, and I just almost wanted to gasp when it happened, because it was just so perfectly staged. He never said one complete idea in the whole hour that we were pounding through this stuff. And I invited him because we needed to have some male input in this landscaping. Not one sentence finished.
Isn't that interesting? And with women, there's a little bit more of a give and take, but it doesn't like emasculate us or shut us down when we're in that kind of collaboration. So we tend to talk over each other or jump in, and then the other person, and we can go like that. It's a little bit more like that. But for the masculine, it's a shutdown and they are not going to continue. And so it's a beautiful aha paradigm shift light bulb thing. Jason, can you share? I see that your hand's up, and it's so fun to see all these men on here.
Yeah, hey, good to see everyone here as well.
Good to see you.
Yeah, like I grew up with two older sisters, and like as I was hearing all of that, like I had and I reflected back, like a lot of the time I had to fight for the space to speak, and so if I really wanted to say something, and this happened way later, like I think like after I went out into the workforce and started like working and doing things, like I would start saying things like, hey, can you let me finish? Right. And really doing those things, trying to hold the space for myself. But I didn't really um, know what that, like I wasn't familiar with this modality, right? So I was really just trying to finish my thoughts. And even though I tried to do that a lot of the time, it was hard to get it all the way through because my ideas got kind of messed up, right? And like I'll speak to the other side of it is like when I have some of my best ideas probably like 30 or 40 minutes into a conversation, but it's a lot of like, well, when I'm up with talking with another man, like we'll each talk for like 15, 20 minutes straight listening, and then then the other person goes, but then our ideas become really, really fully formed, and that has become some really great business ideas for us. Whereas like I know I can get a lot of detailed stuff done when I'm on a call with with women who, because all of those detailed things, like it's like they fly onto the board and I'm like, oh, this is great. Like I probably never would have thought of all of them anyways. But it was like kind of those two different experiences have been really, really conscious for me.
Wow, thank you so much. That's so enlightening that and it is with the feminine energy going into brainstorming. We're so collaborative. It's almost like bees swarming, and there's like getting tons of stuff onto the board, like you said, can happen really fast. And that was totally my experience in my conversation with the man in my life. I was talking, and I noticed it was like a 15-minute listening and then a 15-minute share. There's these really long kind of like get all the information out in one period, which is a very different kind of communication than otherwise. So I want to really encourage you on page 10 to have these conversations with loved ones. And I included questions about transition time as well as these other keys of the, and key number 3 as well. But in these conversations, really exercise and use this new information to listen to learn is what we call it, listen to learn. So it's really cool. So let's hop into the stages of development. I know at the beginning I went through the basics of them, but as we go into just looking at the page that I began with at the beginning, we go into the night. The night is the young man that he hits puberty. He starts to really go after those adventures and those new experiences and conquering new things. You'll see a lot of young men go into a lot of athletics that push them to get them into places that really push their abilities, right? It's just a natural phase. They don't even know that they're doing it. But what have you noticed about the nights in your life? I know in the dating scene, dating a knight is totally different than dating a prince or a king, right? But yeah, I married a knight, and we moved 8 times in 10 years. And it was 8 different jobs and 2 master's degrees. It was just, he was in that phase of knight, and he was just wanting another adventure and wanting another thing, right? So what do you notice about the knights in your life?
So my husband's I definitely met during his night phase. He was an entrepreneur. We lived in New York City. Every 5 nights a week, we were out to eat. We were always having a good time. I always wanted to know, why didn't he want to get married? And he would say, but we're so young, but we have to travel, but we have to do this, we have to do that. And I don't know, I guess in my heart, I knew that it was something that we had to just take our time getting toward. And I think that I really did see him mature into his Prince phase, which I guess is where we are now. I mean, the adventure is still there, but there's a little bit more of hustle and a little bit more of understanding of one another. I think that some of these things we've learned so far, I kind of learned on my own during the course of our relationship. We've been together 12 years. So my husband is not one to be interrupted. It takes him a lot to put together a cohesive thought, and you could either start a huge fight or you can have a great conversation depending on what you choose to do. And, I just think that it's interesting to hear somebody put these down as actual principles, because, these are things that I could certainly do to improve on and learn more about, but I can totally see their application, even just in my own life.
Oh my goodness. This is one of my favorite things about finding an author that says the things that have been on my mind and that I've been trying, like I've known, but it says it in a principled way, or it says it in a way that goes, oh yeah, like I realized that I've known that before. So that's super cool that, and I was thinking, like, she's a Karen, like in the best kind of way, like the kind of way in Keys to the Kingdom, which is you were figuring a lot of this out on your own, and you weren't trying to emasculate, or you weren't trying to make your husband wrong. You were just trying to figure him out in a like open-hearted way. And that's so beautiful. Like a lot of us are learning this and going, oh man, like I did it all wrong because I didn't know this. But it sounds like you were just like honoring him in the very best way you could and figuring him out along the way. And that's really beautiful. So thank you. And I wanted to invite Carmen to come off mute and share your thoughts.
I thought the night thing was interesting because I was such a knight in my 20s. I mean, I was openly like, I don't know if I'm ever getting married. I'm definitely not having kids. And I was traveling constantly. And that was actually really attractive to a lot of men.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think it's interesting. I don't know if I would classify then that as like being a very masculine stage for me in a way. I don't know. Like,
This is a super good point. I'm gonna interrupt you, but there's like she says women will go through these developments of men on their own if they're in a really masculine role or chasing their career or that kind of thing. So if you've climbed the corporate ladder or you've built your business and your career, you'll probably see each one of these stages for yourself. So it's I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and then I don't know if this is too premature, but kind of along the same lines. Then when I got married later, and my Mark, was very much into princehood. And what I think was interesting about that is because we also waited to have kids till later because we got married late. And that combination of Prince only wanting to focus on his career and having kids at the same time was kind of a disaster. So some others might be able to relate to that as well. Like that description really like explained to me what was going on for quite a few years.
Yeah, especially when the expectation is there for him to be involved and want to spend time and do all of those things, right? So it's learning this information going, oh, like what can you expect of a mid-prince? And what can you ask of them and how to ask them? So it's respecting where they're at, but at the same time asking for your needs to be met, right? Like this course isn't about just, oh, let men be men. It's learning about this and then learning how to communicate. And really, there's a key to learning how to ask for what you need and getting clear as a woman what you need and then how to ask for it.
Yeah, and I am very clear that I did not ask in the correct ways and that I pointed out very often his insufficiency in spending time with me and the children at the time. So like, I don't know, that part just really resonated with me today in the Cards This Week in that book.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm going to point out with that, this point at the very bottom of the first lesson that says, before we move on, are you willing to never willfully invalidate yourself for not already knowing this information and forgive yourself in advance for mistakes that you have already made in the past, right? And there's a lot of this. I did the best I could with the information I had at the time. And if I had more information at the time, I would have acted differently probably, right? And so that's a big part. And then the next part is like committing to never knowingly use this to hurt, diminish, or disempower men in any way. So I wanted to touch on that on page 8, because that's really important to kind of realize, yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like, did not, and still I mess up. I still nag my boys and do all the wrong things. So even if you know this stuff, but knowingly, like, go, like, I'm going to use this and really try to hurt them. So Jody, okay, what's your share?
So I have this really unique opportunity that arose is since I put the art of opening up on my vision board and started your class. I've reconnected with my boyfriend when I was 16, like my first love. So I found all these old pictures, and like we met again in Colorado recently, and so it's been on like text. So, oh my God, I need this more than ever now. So I don't do all the wrong things like I can see myself doing in every area with all the men. But I just absolutely love this information. I wanted to thank you for doing it. And I'm just so excited because he was in that, I guess it would be the night stage, right? At the time when we were together. And then now pretty much king.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. And I need to learn now so I can really do this the right way from the get-go, and so
I'm going to give you a jump head start of the next lesson, but the key to being with a king is learning how to receive. So I'm so excited for you.
And that's my most challenging. It has
I know well enough that this is going to be a very fun ride for you as you learn how to receive, because that's been a struggle for you. So that's so exciting. So let's jump into Prince. And I think a lot of us have had enough experiences with princes and the three phases of the prince. If you want to get to the page 13, it has the layout of the prince, but I want you guys to jump in to your breakout rooms, and you guys can discuss this phase and your experience with it in smaller groups. But before we do, I'm going to just jump into the pop-up, the pop-up key number 3 of Keys to the Kingdom, which is the pop-up, which is basically, if you want your prince to remember certain things, their head is down and their focus is on the one thing that they're focused on, which is building the kingdom. So part of learning how to ask for what you want, if you want them to remember your birthday or the kids' birthdays or your date night or your anniversary, this pop-up is a really cool tool to know with any prince. And so it's this idea of just, a month before going, oh, I'm so excited about our anniversary. It's only 1 month away. And then going 2 weeks before, like, oh, I'd love to go to this restaurant. It would be so fun to go to this restaurant. Do you want me to make reservations? Right? And then 2 days before, like, remember I made those reservations and I'm so excited to go with you. And then you don't end up at your anniversary with nothing planned and disappointment. And the expectation is that he organized something for you, right? So this is a cool tool and an awesome key to remember and to have. And so I want you guys to have that as an option. And I'm going to break you guys up into breakout rooms so that you guys can have these cool conversations with each other.
I'll just review the 3 phases for Prince are early Prince. They're deciding what they want to be kings of. Middle Prince is they're urgently working on building and establishing themselves. And late Prince, they ease up and pay more attention to other things. And then this is the shortest part because then they're going to be getting into the tunnel.
So the big question is, who in your life is a prince, and what stage of prince is he in, and what's your experience of that? Okay. Awesome. Enjoy, have fun. I'll see you back in 7 minutes. So too bad Zoom doesn't let me record every room so I can go back and listen to all the fascinating conversations with these fascinating humans. If you can put your biggest takeaway from today's class in the chat, then we can all just look at that and go through it really quick and share what you got out of this. And it's just so exciting. And maybe you can make a commitment for this next week, what you're going to do to apply this wisdom to share. And so
yeah, so at the beginning of our call, I just had a different perspective coming around at this idea of the pop-up. And when I first read through key number 3 in your notes, it was that feeling. I felt a little bit triggered because I'm like, well, wait a minute. Why does the prince get to just focus on all his stuff in his life and he doesn't have any responsibility? Like, why is it all my responsibility to think of the anniversaries and the birthdays and all the special things? Why do I have to do all the work? And like, I can see giving reminders or saying that, but I would think that they do have some kind of responsibility to be engaged or to take initiative on things without you having to take that load off of them. So that was what.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And you don't have to, you don't have to do any of this, right? It's just if you want to have the best experience of yourself and have someone remember your anniversary, but really, like, none of this, it's just if you want to have a different experience of someone. And also, I think that it's really cool to share these kind of things with a prince and go, hey, you're so one-track minded right now that it is hard for you to even remember something as important as my birthday, because I know that you know that my birthday is important, and I know that you love me, and I know that you want to help. So how can I help you? And some of the questions in the conversations with a loved one can help you to have these kind of conversations. Go like, what's it like for you when you forget something really important, like an anniversary? Like, what's that like for you? And get into their world. Just feel like it must be hard, like having compassion and going, that must be hard for you to be in this phase of life where it's just all one thing and you can't, like, I spoke with a prince earlier this week and had a session with him, and he was just like, it's so hard because I want to focus on my family and I want to focus on my parents and I want, like, his desire is not to be so, but there's like this compellingness that's going on. And so it's like with a little 5-year-old, like, why should I, a 3-year-old, like, why should I tie their shoes? They should figure out how to tie their shoes. Well, they maybe should, but do you want to have a better experience of yourself as a mother or not? Like, you could just not tie their shoes or get them shoes that don't tie up, right? So, yeah.
I think it's just a matter of having the conversation initially and then saying, I recognize your single focus. Like, how could I support you? Would it be okay if I reminded you a few different times and came up with some ideas, or if we could set aside 20 minutes once a month to think about all the events coming up, and then we can have a discussion, and then you can go back to your single focus.
Totally. Absolutely. And that's exactly like in the conversations with a loved one. It's like, is there anything I can do to help remind you? Or how would you like to be reminded on page 15? So fantastic. I love that you brought that up, and it's so, so real. So,
and it's real with it's real with any job that we have. There are different ways that people need to help. We need to help them succeed, like to set them up for success, whether they're women or men, right? And so it's sort of going, okay, I'm in partnership with this person, and how do they need me to support them? And then they're definitely going to be doing the same in a different way for us if it's, you know, a reciprocal relationship. Not that they're going to be doing it in the same way. They'll do it in a different way of providing, or of providing experiences, or whatever the male in our life is doing, right? So we're just like, help me help you. I need to know how to do this well, right?
Yeah.
The
So
point, right? How to win and make points.
yeah. Yeah, like giving them points. That's from Understanding Men, but helping, like, men play for points. And so if you give them chances to win, then you're going to have a better experience of them, and they're going to have a better experience of themselves, and then they protect and provide, and they feel more drawn to you and attracted to you, and it's all a win, right? So yeah, Jason, go ahead.
Oh yeah, just to add to what Julia was saying actually. So what's been interesting is I've been in the opposite seat where and like what my coach had always told me was, you know, the person with a higher level of awareness has to take the charge, right? So in this case, in the frame that I'm seeing it, the the woman is getting more awareness, right? As we read this book, as we're learning about it, it's framing it from your seat of the table of like, if you want the change, you have to take responsibility and start the change. It's not that they won't pick it up, but it's that if they're not aware yet, then you have to be the one who starts that action. And so like for me, as I'm hearing this too, like I had a lot of complaints, you know, when I first started working on myself, because I was like, oh man, like why do I have to do all this heavy lifting, all this thinking, or this process to make all these things happen? And it was because I was more aware at the time. But there's plenty of other things that my wife is more aware of than me, and she needs to lead me in those places, right? So like I guess that would just be my I guess a man's take on it. But also like when I was in more of a building stage myself, um, maybe it's also dependent on like what they're really focused on and how single focused they are. Because as I'm learning this modality, right, like I think part of my what I believed was my kingdom was also really being hyper aware of what my wife was going through and all of these different things. And even trying to be really aware, I only like, I didn't get every date, right? Like I might have become aware of it maybe like the day before or the week before because I had set something in my calendar. But then sometimes things were missing from my calendar, and I was like, oh, it crushed me to know that like I missed that. But I only found out afterwards because she was like, hey, wasn't this supposed to happen? Or like, oh, hey, it's like it's so and so's birthday, and I was just like, oh man, like I can't believe I missed that. But back then it was like, I can't believe it's not in my calendar. I thought I put it in there, but it was that same feeling of just, I wanted to, but it wasn't my primary focus and it just left my brain.
Thank you so much, Jason. It's so helpful. Like, who finds it helpful to get these male perspectives? It's so good. So Nate shared, I love to hear about how men act and react to situations according to the research Allison's done. It helps me to examine my own actions and make changes against my observed nature. I also like to know the formula to help me communicate with other men and women better. So it's I'm gonna add this to the Zoom so we can remember all these like takeaways and everything that everyone got. But thank you so much for sharing. Judy, I feel like you have one more thing to say. Is that right?
Have one more thing to say.
Before I wrap up.
I'm just so happy that so many are joining in and taking it and sharing it with other people. I had somebody today and just showed her the one on listening in the book. And she said, and she's got a 12-year-old and a 12-year-old boy, a 14-year-old daughter, and her husband. And I think it's really important to not mess yourself up for what you didn't know,
Yeah.
right? That's huge, whether you're a man or a woman. And I just think we're bringing sunshine to and new possibilities to so much. So thank you, Paige, for doing. I really appreciate it.
Love you too.